Hi, and welcome to our very first podcast episode, Patient RX. So I'm a patient, Tina's a patient. We're going to introduce ourselves here in a minute. We're both in the pharma industry, but we feel like we have a really unique view based on the experiences that we both went through. So I'm a Parkinson's patient. My name is Jessica Krauser. I'm also a marketer, and I've been in the pharma industry for almost 20 years. After I was diagnosed, a lot of things happened. One of which is I co-founded a Parkinson's nonprofit to help bring awareness. And I also host a podcast for patients called The Secret Life of Parkinson's.
I'm a pharmacist by training, and I have over 27 years of experience in the field, in the pharmaceutical industry. And about a year and a half ago, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. This journey has been extremely challenging, but it's given me a unique perspective on the healthcare system and the patient experience. And it's helped me recognize the gaps in the patient experience and the patient journey where we as industry professionals need to take action.
So, why did we think we can start a podcast in the beginning? So, just to put it out there, when we first met through a mutual friend, we shared the same passion about wanting to see change in the industry based on our personal experiences, right? You know, Tina, you were coming to me and you said that you wanted to create a space, to share your stories, but to do it in a way to make change, right?
Exactly. What I found, which was the aha moment for me, is as a pharmacist, as a clinician, being in this industry for so long, I was on the side of the table that built programs, that
Mm-hmm.
built patient access programs, that built the patient journey processes and the services that would ultimately touch a patient. And I worked very closely with pharmaceutical partners and specialty pharmacies and health insurance plans, really to create that entire experience. But when I was diagnosed with cancer, what I realized was maybe I had it all wrong. I thought I understood what the patient needed. I thought I understood where the gaps were. And it really became this moment, a humbling moment, because
Mm-hmm.
I felt that maybe I should have done things differently. I should have had a different service, or we should have created, more services, or just, I started rethinking everything I've done for the past 27 years in my career. And in one way, I probably felt a little ashamed that I didn't understand the patient truly. And I also felt a tremendous amount of regret for all the patients that I spoke to on the phone
Mm-hmm.
and counseled them, and thought maybe I could have spoken to them differently. So fast forward, here we are. And I do feel that there is still a lack of empathy, a lack of compassion, and a lack of true understanding of what the patient goes through. And with us being in a position where we work in the industry, I think that we could bring forward voices for change,
Mm-hmm.
bring on industry experts to talk about some controversial topics,
Mm-hmm.
and topics that maybe can help our partners and stakeholders build better programs, ultimately keeping the patient at the center of that equation.
I would actually, I was planning on asking you about your, like, how you found out you had cancer and what your reaction and your journey has been since then. But I just remembered our next episode that we're going to record. We're going to take your story that you did at from your panel discussion at Assembia,
Mm.
and we're going to share that as part of the episode. So we'll wait for your story then, because it is incredibly humbling to listen to. But for me, because I don't talk about mine, and I don't think we're going to go into it anymore after this episode and then yours next episode. But for me, the my diagnosis of Parkinson's was it wasn't exactly a shock, I would say, to me, but it was a shock to everybody else, especially because I was 37 years old at the time. It just started with a tremor when I was 35. I took it down to just be essential tremors. And then the following year, I started experiencing pain and tension and rigidness in my calf and my foot. And it just got to the point where it was more than just annoying. So I went to see a foot and ankle doctor and a specialist, and then I saw my first neurologist, went through a whole battery of tests. At follow-up appointments, I shared symptoms that led me to believe it was Parkinson's. So like, thankfully, things like the Michael J. Fox Foundation, Parkinson's Foundation had, pretty clear things written out as to like what initial symptoms look like. But then from there, it sent me to a movement disorder specialist where she then diagnosed me in the office with just a clinical view of my movements, because there at that point is no test that you can physically take. But anyways, the journey since then has totally been unpredictable, and I know yours has been too. And like I said, we'll get into your story in our next episode, where everybody will hear about the challenges that you faced. But when we talk about our professional and personal lives with our conditions, what are some of the moments of, triumph and breakthrough that you can think of managing your conditions, whether it was professional or personal?
That's really hard to answer because I'm still fresh out of active treatment for my
Mm-hmm.
cancer. And I say this to so many people around me. People say, "Oh, you're a survivor," and I keep correcting them to say, "I'm still surviving cancer,"
Mm-hmm.
because my journey isn't really done yet. I'm still on oral oncolytics. They have a whole host of their own issues, and so right now, I would say my triumph is I finished active treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my triumph is that I was invited to go speak to a large manufacturer about my experiences and where I felt some change could happen,
Mm-hmm.
specifically around marketing materials, images that they use, and educational materials to support the patient. And to my surprise, they listened, and they have subsequently put forth a lot of changes. So, me speaking up and using my voice has started to make a difference, and so that is ultimately the biggest triumph. And
Mm-hmm.
I hope that for us on this podcast, we could continue to do that.
Yeah.
Is to have a lot of discussions, hard discussions, and get people to think differently.
Yeah. And I think you said it perfectly. And that's what we want this podcast to really be all about is, again, we're going through these experiences, and, limited in the sense that I'm in one disease group and you're in a different disease group and there's hundreds. But, taking our experiences and looking at it from a professional standpoint, not just as the patient, and figuring out what are the gaps. Because, I've definitely found some. I know you have more than just that as a gap or issue that you ran into. And just like you said, like bringing the right people to the table to see like what change can be made. We don't want this podcast just to be like, oh, let's have a discussion on what's new. It's
Right.
what can we make better for the patient
Yeah.
population.
Yeah. And I also envision this podcast to be a place where we introduce some new and exciting things that are happening. And maybe
Yeah.
somebody is doing something wonderful in the industry that we want to highlight and say, look at what someone is doing and how can we elevate that. So we also want this to be a space where we talk about some wins. And
sorry, I just want to say but it's like wins from like not just, like a financial or distribution standpoint, but wins from a patient standpoint. So for example, I don't know if we're going to name companies on this podcast, so I'm going to refrain from doing so right now, but there's a pharmaceutical company that there's a advertisement for on TV right now. And I saw it yesterday and I was like, oh my God, that's great. Like, I don't think they talked about their product at all, but they sponsored this commercial, or it was brought to you by them. And it was talking to their patient population to find a doctor, to find a specialist, visit this website. And it wasn't, I don't think it's theirs. Maybe it is, maybe it's part of theirs, but it had nothing to do with their name. But I saw, the name of the pharmaceutical company and I'm like, that's a win. Like they're doing exactly what the patient needs. The patient doesn't always need to know like the certain drug. It's tell me what doctor to go to. How do I find this right person for this issue that I have? And then we'll get down to the next part. So I thought, like, again, that's a win from my standpoint.
Exactly. But also, for the listeners out there, we want you to share with us what's important, what's interesting. What do you want to hear about? Is there something that you're working on that you want us to know about and we could highlight on this podcast, all centered around the patient and how do we make things better? So if there is an opportunity where you want us to talk about a topic, then reach out to us.
We'll post
open.
Yeah, we're going to post our email address in the description of the podcast, so it'll be there for everybody, and then we'll have it out on social media for people to get a hold of us. So,
yeah,
this is super exciting. Episode 1.
Exciting. Episode 1. Yes, very exciting. And we really do hope to bring some topics forward that everybody will be interested in hearing about.
And I think just to add on and to close out, not even just sharing what you're doing as a company, but if you're a patient as well in the pharma industry, and just know you're not alone. We're doing the same thing. I know not everybody likes to come out and say that if they're a patient or not, but if you are and you've seen something that can be changed or should be looked into, that's also something that would be great to let us know.
Absolutely.
So, until next time, we'll see you next week.
Yes, we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for tuning in.